Welcome to part 2 of the Aliens Fireteam Elite Wave 2 line. Today's figure I present to you, the Busters Xenomorph. One of the most common xenomorphs in a game, known to explode upon its death, making it a pure annoyance to the players, killing it point blank. This variant is only seen in Aliens Fireteam Elite. However, it shares similar characteristics to the Boiler Xenomorph from Colonial Marines. Before we get too deep into this review, there's something that I want to confront and talk about. I dismissed this figure a little bit. I kind of saw it as a special guest feature, just something, that came along with the Spitter Alien. I spent so much time focusing on the Spitter Alien that I really didn't put much thought into this figure. I kind of thought, oh, it's just basically another variant of the Runner Alien. Technically it is, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to oversell it to you guys, but there's certain things about this figure, and I think you know what I'm talking about based on this little rotation it's getting right now, that are absolutely beautiful on it. And I gotta say, this could be my favorite in this wave right here. That said though, before we get any further, before I dissect it any further, I've got to go ahead and weigh this figure, and I've got to go ahead and get a measurement of this figure. Let's begin the first part of measuring this figure. He is about, I'd say, well, here's the deal right here. It depends on how you want to measure him. Do you want to go ahead and measure from, say, this point right here, and he's going to be about 4 inches? And technically, you can go ahead and go from here, and you're going to go ahead and get a little bit more. I think it's pretty well about 4 to 5 inches, I do want to say that. But if we go ahead and go across, he should roughly be around 13 inches. That is what the other ones were, if my memory is correct. And yeah, there's really no differences between this one and the Runner Alien. It's pretty well all the same. I mean, obviously there's a few modifications we'll talk about later in this review. But yeah, those things are all pretty well the same. Okay, let's go ahead and get our weigh-in now of the Buster Alien. Okay, this is kind of peculiar to me right here. I'm gonna assume it's gonna be because of the translucent plastic, but this is a bit lighter than the other Runner Alien, which I have him on hand. And I remember, I think that they were a little heavier. I know the Prowler Alien was the heaviest. And yeah, I'm correct right there. So it has to be that translucent plastic that might just be a little bit lighter than the usual plastic. That's what my assumption is. I don't think there's anything else that's been added really on this mold. The packaging, I really can't say a lot more about this right here. It's nice, it's the Fireteam Elite packaging. We have a picture of the Buster Alien smiling on the side. And then for that, we have a little read-up on the Buster Alien if you want to go ahead and pause and read that. All the different figures from the line, we have the Runner, the Spitter, the Prowler, and of course our promotional pictures of the Buster Alien, which is looking amazing in these shots right here. Alright, I've got to go ahead and say, this is one of those figures that in hand, it is much better looking. Like, I really didn't have an appreciation for this figure until I actually got it in hand. So, for the mold of it, it is primarily just the Runner Alien, like I said. There really is no differences as far as it goes. With the exception, we do have a little spike or a little horn on the top right here. So, that's about the only thing that I can really point out. As for everything else, though, it is just exactly as is. Just the most noticeable thing is that the actual mold is using this translucent plastic all over the place, even heavier than what the Spitter Alien had used, and it just looks amazing right here on the top. I mean, just look at how immaculate that looks. That's probably the best word that I'm going to go ahead and use to explain that. It doesn't stop right there. It also continues and goes down to the arms. It also goes down to the actual legs, and even on the actual chest of this figure, it is there, and you can kind of tell this figure kind of has a little translucentness in between various different spots as far as like in the bones of it. I can't help but praise that enough. That is so freaking cool, the way that this figure was done. I think they found the best route to do it. I don't really buy too many figures that have these translucent plastics. I mean, I know there's a few of them they've done with the Xenomorphs. Say like the Big Chap prototype design is kind of one of them. But for this one to have a nice mixture though, it just looks great though. I'm happy with this right here. In fact, I feel like I got my money's worth just looking at this figure. I can't say enough positive about it. It's got a lot of draw to it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do you guys a favor. I went ahead and slapped on the macro lens so that way you guys can get an in-depth look at the head of this right here and kind of see what I'm talking about. First of all, I love how this mold right here is just kind of like webbing all over the top right here. We have our regular mold, and then for the underneath it, we have the translucentness. But to pick up on this coloration, we've got to kind of move the light around and get in a little closer. And let's see how if we can do this without getting any glare. I think this is probably a good shot right here. You can kind of tell at the back end of the dome, it kind of is like a mixture of dark blue and green, which looks astounding. And this figure right here makes a better use of, say, the dark blues than the Spitter Alien does, where it was kind of limited. That one did have it, and it was more so on the torso area, but this one, it just littered all over the place, and it blends so damn well with this translucent mold. Switching back to the regular lens, we're going to go ahead and now kind of get some movement in. Couldn't put the other one on because if I try to move it around to macro lens, it's constantly going to try to readjust and get blurry, and this will kind of work better for you guys. But yeah, as you can tell right here, it just kind of makes use of a lot of different colors throughout right here, between our dark blue, our green, and then for that, even on the end of the tail right here, we have a dark brown right here. And this dark brown it's apparent in certain areas, especially around like the collarbone and some of the neck a little bit right there, even on the actual hands so much right there. So there's just so much happening on this right here. I think the paint apps, this figure, again, Neca, in this line right here, the Fireteam Elite line right here, it just gotten so much better. Back in the day, I used to praise a lot of their paint apps, but my biggest thing is I'd find some areas with spotty paint apps that I'd really call out, and this is just looking a lot more clean. Like, I'm impressed with this. That's probably one of the best things about this line right here. There's even some of the browns down here on the legs, right there, the lower part. So, I've sung so much praise about this figure, but I gotta call something out, and it's kind of with the articulation, a quality control issue right here, and that would have to be the actual mouth is just absolutely just stuck and jammed. I'm gonna have to go ahead and put him in some warm water and kind of work that out. I can only imagine how the tongue is going to be in there. But the overall head, though, we swing down, up, throws back, so much better than what the Runner Aliens used to be back in the day, because I remember when the original one came out, I had to make an incision back there, which probably is one of those things that I wanted to recommend it to everybody due to the fact you got to be careful with an X-Acto knife. I got it, but the whole intention, though, was what bugged me about that figure back in the day is I wanted it to look forward like it was chasing something or like it was preying on something. It had his sight set on something, basically, that was going to kill. But this one, though, ever since the Ultimate, and even with this one right here, it's been fixed. After that, the neck just kind of rocks all around. There's a lot of head articulation. The articulation on this one is a lot more free than what the overall Spitter Alien was. And then after that, our arm, look at that freedom right there. Sweet freedom right there. All around. It doesn't have those broad shoulders, doesn't have any tubes on the back, nothing that is actually just restricting it. It just is as free to go as it wants to. We got one joint right here for the elbow. The wrists all around, in, back, just rock around. Abs. Legs as free as usual. Our double jointed knees. And then for that, our second and third articulation is actually on the legs. And for the tail, this one actually right here, unlike the Spitter Alien, and I knew I wasn't crazy, I was sitting there and I was thinking, do they have that? I think that the AVP aliens had them. Yes, usually, generally, Xenomorph figures can just spin on around. Now, maybe my Spitter Alien was just stuck. I could go back and revisit that, but overall, this one does have that, which is kind of nice, and it has the long bendy wire, which really just kind of continues all the way throughout there. Articulation, absolutely the same as what the Runner Alien is. It is just masterful for what it's worth. I just wish we could get some double jointed elbows, though, on this figure overall. And maybe even some digits that could change. That's probably one of the biggest drawbacks on these actual figures in this line right here. We don't have any articulation to the extent of that. Can we talk about the placement of these two bubbles on the front of it? Like, looking at the front view, this looks terrifying, actually. Like, it reminds me of, like the gray aliens, you see those big old bulging empty black eyes. That's what I think of. Just overall placement is just like astounding. Like, I'm sorry. This figure stole the show in Wave 2. I'm sorry to the Spitter Alien. It's a cool figure for what it's worth, and I do recommend that figure. But God, this is just astounding right here. Just, it's more novelty, but it's badass. So, in summary, I do want to go and say this is probably one of those figures that if I didn't have the budget and if I was just going to say I wanted to get one, I feel like I probably ideally would have went with the Spitter Alien, because for me, ideally, it feels like an easier draw due to the fact that's actually a different design, and I like having different designs. However, though, this figure stole the attention regardless, and I'm so happy to have it in my collection, even if it is, like I said before, novelty with the changes in the mold, the translucentness. It just seems like it has a lot more simplicity due to the fact that it pretty well just takes a design I already like, which is the Runner Alien. Obviously, the Spitter Alien, there's certain things I was very critical on the design. The figure of it was great, but this figure, though, to me, I think it is just won my heart. It's something I'm crazy about, and I just fell more and more in love with it as I did this review. Also, I do want to mention before I even shot this review, I had more focus on the actual Spitter alien. This figure, I kind of looked at it and kind of glanced on it, and I didn't think too much of it, but now I have a firm appreciation for it. Thank you for watching. Go ahead and like and subscribe. Stay tuned. There'll be more content. I have the Godzilla project still in the works, and when any more figures come on out, I'll bring it to you as fast as possible. Thank you again.